do you go from a European prodigy and a transcendent sharpshooter to a forgotten NBA star in just the blink of an eye? This is the story of Drazen Petrovic.
The step through, just terrific.
Born in Šibenik, Yugoslavia on October 22, 1964, the odds were instantly stacked against Petrovic. With an entire population of only 4 million people, this was the last place you'd expect an NBA star to emerge from. However, Petrovic wasn't your normal baller, and at just 15 years old, he was already playing professionally for Yugoslavia's KK Šibenika, averaging a whole 13 points, when most kids in his age couldn't even drive a car yet. Then, fast forward to 1983, and Petrovic took Šibenika all the way to Yugoslavia's club championship. Only this time, he was averaging an absurd 24.5 points per game. Yeah, this kid was built different, because in just 3 years, he'd already maxed out the country's competition. So much so that American universities were offering him scholarships to play basketball as early as 16 years old. Yet Petrovic ultimately passed up the American dream, since Petrovic realized that there are some things more important than basketball. So in 1984, Petrovic spent a year of mandatory service in the Yugoslav military. Dang, this bro just put his entire future in jeopardy for his country. Mad props. That said, when he returned in 1985, he picked up right where he left off. Well, actually, he picked off even better than before. After all, Drazen received the opportunity of a lifetime, teaming up with his older brother, allowing him and his brother, Ako, to form the best backcourt in all of Europe, all while playing for one of Šibenika's biggest rivals, Cibona. And let's just say they did not take it for granted, because together they led Cibona to unfathomable success in EuroLeague, the premier European league, during which, in their first season together, Petrovic averaged a whopping 30.9 points per game, including a team-high 36 points in the league's 1985 final, en route to Cibona's first ever EuroLeague championship. But as impressive as this feat was, things are only going to get crazier from here. I'm talking about bribery, making the NBA, and becoming one of the world's best before a tragic ending you won't see coming. However, that's still a ways away, since the very next year, Petrovic returned to Cibona with one goal on his mind: be better than everyone else. So lo and behold, he did just that. Because on October 5th, 1985, Petrovic made history, scoring a ridiculous 112 points against Yugoslavia's Olimpia, during which Petrovic was unconscious all game long, shooting an insane 40 for 60 from the field, as well as a perfect 22 for 22 from the stripe, all but solidifying what everyone was already thinking: the dude is ready for the big leagues. So following another championship with Cibona, it was finally time to make the jump to the NBA. And thankfully, there was one team willing to make Drazen's dream a reality: the Portland Trail Blazers, who selected Petrovic with the 60th overall pick of the 1986 NBA draft. But let's pause for a second. This put Petrovic in an unprecedented position. Here he was, some 22-year-old attempting to go straight from Yugoslavia to the NBA, the National Basketball Association. So you could only imagine the steep learning curve he had to face in front of him, which is why bro eventually decided the jump was too much. Instead, it was time to go back to Cibona, the team he would spend his next 2 seasons with. That said, Petrovic could run, but he couldn't hide. So following another 2-year run with Cibona, Petrovic faced 2 options in 1988. Move to America and play for the Trail Blazers, or sign with another European team, and believe it or not, Petrovic chose the latter, signing with Real Madrid for the US equivalent of $4 million. Or so we thought, because did I mention how difficult the jump was? Yeah, well, what I forgot to mention is that Yugoslav sporting laws required him to stay within the country until the age of 28. So here we are, the same problem all over again. However, this is where Petrovic finally caught his break. Enter Real Madrid's Antonio Arizaga, a man determined to do everything in his power to bring him to Real Madrid. So, long story short, Arizaga pulled his magic, got on the phone with Drazen's head coach at Cibona, and struck up a deal. Don't get me wrong, there was a lot of bribery and corruption involved, but none of that mattered now. This was it, the perfect opportunity right in Drazen's lap. And boy, he didn't disappoint. Because in Drazen's first season with Real Madrid, he averaged over 28 points per game, carrying Real Madrid to a Spanish Kings Cup title over their arch-nemesis Barcelona in the process. All that to say, Drazen wasn't just a Yugoslavian basketball star. He was now a global basketball star, and let's just say, once the Trailblazers realized this, his life would no longer be the same, because after only one season with Real Madrid, the Blazers bought out the rest of Drazen's contract to bring him to the United States. That said, they weren't just about to hand him the keys to the house. They still had two NBA legends on the roster, Clyde Drexler and Terry Porter. Plus, the Blazers also had some doubts surrounding Drazen's skill set and athleticism. After all, they were concerned he wasn't quick enough and lacked the lateral quickness needed on defense. Consequently, the Blazers asked Drazen to become a catch-and-shoot type player. In other words, bad move, dude. While the Blazers were right to realize Drazen's strength as a shooter, their evaluation was flawed. Since Drazen was naturally a more aggressive player, he created his own shots and opened up the floor for his teammates. So as a rookie, he only averaged 12 minutes before things got even worse, when he averaged a mere 7 minutes the following season. And it didn't take a genius to realize that a change was desperately needed. Drazen recalls 18 months have passed by. Too long. I have to leave to prove how much I'm worth. Never in my life did I sit on the bench, and I don't intend to do that in Portland. Thankfully, that change came on January 23, 1991, when Drazen was traded to the Brooklyn Nets and given a true chance to showcase his unique skill set. Cause in just his first season with the team, he got an instant boost in minutes to 20.5 minutes, allowing him to average over 12 points per game. That said, not even Drazen expected what was coming next. Since the very next season, Drazen played 37 minutes per game, propelling his score average from over 12 points to a mind-boggling 20-plus points a night on 51% shooting. Sheesh, that's approaching superstar status. Plus, get this, he also finished second for most improved player. Oh, and how could I forget? He also led the Nets to the playoffs for the first time since 1986, during which Drazen scored a career-high 40 points in his first ever playoff appearance. So despite losing in the first round, it appeared Drazen and the Nets would be competitive for a long time to come. Speaking of which, the 1992-93 season marked another step in the right direction, as Drazen averaged over 22 points on 52% shooting and shot 45% from beyond the arc. Good for third best in the entire league. In addition, his season was highlighted by some iconic performances, some of which included a 53-point explosion against the Supersonics. And, my personal favorite, the time my man scored 40 points against Michael Jordan. That said, the most impressive thing from that season was his unyielding desire to compete. Cause turns out that midway through, Drazen sprained his ankle, an injury that was supposed to take him out of commission for 2 months of the season, or at least it was, before he returned only 2 weeks later. I really respect him because he worked very, very hard. His former teammate Clyde Drexler states, "Each and every day in practice, he would be the first guy to come and the last guy to leave the gym. So anybody with that kind of dedication, you have to have a lot of respect for him." Simply put, with Petrovic's incredible work ethic and evolution into one of the league's top scorers, the possibilities were endless, and many fans believed he was destined to become an all-time great. Unfortunately, Mother Nature had other ideas, because just as Petrovic was becoming a household name, tragedy struck. It was June 7th, 1993, and he was traveling to Berlin for a tournament with the Croatian national team that offseason, when, out of the blue, bro was cut off by a semi-truck in the pouring rain. Then, before he knew it, there was nothing he can do. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time, on the receiving end of what was truly a horrific car accident. Because afterward, Petrovic was unable to gain consciousness, meaning that in the snap of the fingers, his world was flipped on its head. And at only 28 years old, Drazen Petrovic's life came to an abrupt ending. However, if you ask me, this is only the beginning, because the worst thing we can do is forget his story and let his legacy die too. So that said, let's look to Reggie Miller, who says, "He was the hardest and the most frustrating guy I've ever had to go against. The best shooter I've ever played against. I've never seen anything like him. People talk about Steph's release being so quick. Petrovic had the quickest release I've ever seen." Rest in peace, legend. You may be gone, but you're not forgotten.